My daughter Emma burst through the front door at 4:47 p.m., her small hands clutching a plastic toy that had already broken in half. The pink unicorn's head dangled from a thin piece of cheap material, and tears streamed down her 7-year-old face. "Mommy," she sobbed, running into my arms. "Uncle David said I don't deserve nice things." I held her close, feeling her little body shake. "What happened, sweetheart?" "At Cousin Melissa's birthday party," Emma hiccuped. "Uncle David gave Melissa this huge dollhouse with real lights and everything. I said it was pretty and he laughed. He said poor kids like me should be happy with dollar store toys. Then he gave me this." She held up the broken unicorn. "It broke when I opened it. My brother David. Of course. He said you're too proud to ask family for help," Emma continued, wiping her nose. "That we live in a tiny apartment because you make bad choices." Melissa laughed too. She said her daddy is successful and yours is just what, baby? Nobody important. Fresh tears fell. "Are we really poor, Mommy? Is that why I can't have nice things?" I took a deep breath, keeping my voice steady. "Emma, go wash your face and pick out a movie. We'll talk about this later, okay?" She nodded and trudged to the bathroom. I heard the water running as I pulled out my phone and opened the voice memo app. I'd started recording the moment Emma walked in. Every word was captured. I sat at my kitchen table and made 2 calls. The first was to James Morrison, my corporate attorney. "James, it's me. I need you to prepare documentation for tomorrow morning. Full ownership disclosure. Yes, the automotive group. All 43 locations. Oh, I'm done waiting. Send everything to David's location by 9 a.m. The second call was to Patricia Hendricks, my chief operating officer. "Patricia, I need you at the flagship dealership tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. Bring the full board. It's time David learned who actually signs his paychecks." I didn't sleep much that night. Instead, I reviewed the acquisition documents from 6 years ago, when I'd purchased the struggling automotive group that included David's precious luxury car dealership. He'd been the general manager then, barely keeping the place afloat with his expensive tastes and poor business decisions. I'd bought the entire chain through my investment firm, restructured everything and kept David in his position. He thought he'd been promoted to owner-operator through some corporate reshuffling. He had no idea his baby sister, the one who wasted her education on charity work, owned every square foot of his showroom. The next morning I dropped Emma at school early and drove to the dealership. Patricia was already there, standing in the parking lot with 5 board members. James arrived moments later, carrying a leather folder thick with documents. "Everything's ready," James said quietly. "I've also prepared the termination paperwork if you decide to go that route." "Let's see how the morning goes," I replied. We walked into the gleaming showroom at exactly 8:43 a.m. David was in his glass office, feet up on his desk, laughing on the phone. Through the window I could see the expensive suit, the designer watch, the arrogant tilt of his head. He'd always been like this. Growing up, David was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. When I got into Harvard, my parents barely noticed. When David barely graduated community college, they threw him a party. When I started my investment firm at 25, my father called it cute. When David got his first sales job, my father bought him a BMW. The dealership receptionist, a young woman named Ashley, looked up nervously. "Can I help you?" "We're here to see David," Patricia said smoothly. "He's expecting us." That was a lie, but Ashley didn't know that. She pressed the intercom. "Mr. Thompson, there are some people here to see you." David glanced through the glass and I saw the exact moment he recognized me. His expression shifted from confusion to irritation. He ended his call and stepped out of his office. "Sarah? What are you doing here?" He looked at the board members. "Who are these people?" "David Thompson?" James stepped forward. "I'm James Morrison, legal counsel for Westfield Investment Group. These are members of the board of directors. We need to speak with you immediately." David's face flushed. "I don't have time for whatever sales pitch you're running. I own this dealership and I don't take meetings with random investment groups." "You don't own this dealership," Patricia said calmly. "You never have. What the hell are you talking about?" David's voice rose. Several salespeople turned to look. "I've owned this place for 6 years. I built this business from nothing." James opened his folder. Mr. Thompson, in 2019, Thompson Luxury Motors and 42 other automotive dealerships were acquired by Westfield Investment Group in a leveraged buyout totaling $847 million. You were retained as general manager, not owner. Your compensation package included a base salary plus performance bonuses, which you've been receiving regularly. David's face went white. That's insane. I would know if I didn't own my own business. You signed all the paperwork, Patricia said. He pulled out a document. This is your employment agreement. Page 7, Section 3, clearly states your role as general manager reporting to the ownership group. I watched David's hands shake as he took the paper. His eyes scanned the page and I saw the exact moment reality hit him. This can't be right, he whispered. Who owns Westfield Investment Group? I do, I said quietly. The showroom went completely silent. Even the mechanics in the back bay had stopped working. David stared at me. That's impossible. You work at some nonprofit. You live in a tiny apartment. You drive a 10-year-old Honda. I live in a rent-controlled apartment in the city because I prefer urban living, I said. I drive a reliable car because I don't need to compensate for anything. And I run Westfield Investment Group, which owns 43 dealerships across 6 states, generating approximately $2.3 billion in annual revenue. One of the salespeople gasped. Ashley's mouth fell open. You're lying, David said, but his voice cracked. Why wouldn't you tell me? Why would I? Kept my tone level. So you could ask for handouts? So you could feel entitled to my success the way you felt entitled to everything else in your life. James pulled out another document. Mr. Thompson, we're also here to address a serious workplace conduct issue. Yesterday at a family gathering, you made disparaging comments to a 7-year-old child about her socioeconomic status and gave her a deliberately inferior gift to humiliate her. That was my niece, David sputtered. That was family business, not work. You used your position at this dealership as evidence of your superiority, Patricia said. You told that child her mother made bad choices while implying your success came from merit. That's creating a hostile environment for the actual owner of this company, and it reflects poorly on our corporate values. David looked around wildly. The entire staff was watching now. His carefully constructed image was crumbling in real time. I want you to understand something, I said, stepping closer. Emma came home yesterday clutching a broken toy, crying because her uncle told her she didn't deserve nice things. She asked me if we were poor. She asked me if I made bad choices. And you know what the worst part was? David didn't answer. She apologized for not being good enough. My 7-year-old daughter apologized for disappointing her family because you made her feel worthless. Sarah, I didn't mean. You gave Melissa a $300 dollhouse. I saw the receipt when you pulled out that cheap toy. You deliberately humiliated my daughter to make yourself feel superior. James cleared his throat. Mr. Thompson, the board has reviewed your performance over the past 6 years. While sales numbers have been adequate, your management style has resulted in a 42% turnover rate, significantly higher than our other locations. We've also discovered several expense account irregularities. David's face went from white to red. What irregularities? Patricia pulled out a tablet. In the past year alone, you've expensed over $180,000 in personal purchases. Designer clothes, jewelry for your wife, your daughter's private school tuition, club memberships, all marked as business development expenses. That's standard, David protested. I need to look successful to sell to wealthy clients. Other general managers achieve higher sales without fraudulent expense claims, James said. We're prepared to pursue legal action for the misappropriated funds. I watched my brother's world collapse. All the bravado, all the superiority drained away as he realized he'd built his entire identity on a foundation he never owned. Please, David said finally. Sarah, please. I'm sorry about Emma. I'll apologize. I'll buy her something nice. Just don't do this. Buy her something nice with what money? I asked. Your salary. The one I've been paying you for 6 years. Ashley's phone rang at the reception desk, but she ignored it, too transfixed by the scene unfolding. I'll fix this, David said desperately. I'll change. I'll be better. You had 7 years to be better, I said. 7 years to be a decent uncle. Instead, you made my daughter cry because it made you feel powerful. James handed David a final document. This is your termination notice, effective immediately. You have until the end of business today to clear out your personal belongings. Security will escort you from the premises. You can't do this, David said weakly. What about my family? What about my reputation? You should have thought about that before you made a child cry over a toy, Patricia said coldly. We've already identified your replacement. She starts Monday. David looked at me one last time. Mom and Dad will never forgive you for this. Mom and Dad don't own 43 car dealerships, I said. And they didn't make Emma cry. You did. 2 security guards appeared from the back office. James had called them before we arrived. They stood on either side of David, professional and immovable. Mr. Thompson, please come with us, one of them said. I watched my brother walk through the showroom he thought he owned, past the salespeople who'd treated him like a king, past the expensive cars he'd sold to feel important. The glass doors closed behind him and he was gone. Patricia turned to the staff. Everyone, please gather for a brief announcement. The 23 employees clustered nervously in the showroom. They looked terrified, probably wondering if they were all getting fired. I'm Patricia Hendricks, Chief Operating Officer of Westfield Investment Group, she said clearly. This is your owner, Sarah Thompson. Some of you may have thought David Thompson owned this dealership. He did not. He was the general manager, and as of today he no longer works here. Your jobs are secure. Your pay and benefits remain unchanged. We'll have a new general manager starting Monday who will meet with each of you individually. Any questions? An older salesman in the back raised his hand. Ma'am, is it true you own all 43 locations? Yes, I said. And you're David's sister? The one he always said worked at a charity. I run a charitable foundation as well, I acknowledged. The Westfield Foundation. We funded the new children's hospital downtown. We also operate the scholarship program that sent 2,000 underprivileged students to college. The same salesman who'd asked about my ownership spoke up again. David told us you were wasting your life on handouts. He said you couldn't hold a real job. David said a lot of things that weren't true, I replied. I'm sure you'll all have time to process this. For now, please return to work. Your commission structures remain the same, and you'll receive full credit for any sales in progress. The staff dispersed slowly, whispers filling the showroom. Ashley approached hesitantly. Miss Thompson? I just want to say, David was really hard to work for. He made a lot of us feel small. I'm glad you're here. I smiled at her. Thank you, Ashley. That means a lot. James, Patricia, and I walked outside. In the parking lot, I could see David sitting in his Mercedes, his head in his hands. The car he'd leased through the dealership's corporate account. The car that technically belonged to me. What do you want to do about the vehicle? James asked, following my gaze. Let him keep it through the month, I said. Give him time to make other arrangements. You're being generous, Patricia noted. I'm being practical. I don't want Emma to hear that I left her uncle stranded. When she's older, she can know the full story. For now, she just needs to know that actions have consequences. I drove back to my apartment, the same rent-controlled place I'd lived in for 8 years. It was small, but it was in a great school district, and Emma loved the park across the street. I didn't need a mansion to prove my worth. That evening, Emma and I sat together on the couch. I'd bought her a real unicorn toy, a high-quality one that cost $40 instead of $2. But more importantly, I'd spent the afternoon researching child therapists who specialized in family dynamics. Mommy, did something happen today? Emma asked. You seem different. I had a hard conversation with Uncle David, I said carefully. Sometimes adults need to have difficult talks when someone's behavior isn't kind. Because of what he said to me. Yes, sweetheart. What he said wasn't okay. You deserve to be treated with respect, and so do I. Nobody gets to make you feel bad about yourself. Emma hugged her new unicorn. I like this one better anyway. I know you do, baby. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. David called. He's very upset. What did you do? I didn't respond. She'd find out soon enough. They all would. Tomorrow I had a foundation board meeting. Next week, quarterly earnings reports. The month after that, we were breaking ground on a new dealership in Portland. But tonight I was just a mom sitting with her daughter watching a movie about talking animals and eating popcorn. Emma fell asleep against my shoulder around 8:30. I carried her to bed, tucked her in and kissed her forehead. "You deserve everything good in this world," I whispered. "And nobody will ever make you doubt that again." In the morning I'd deal with the fallout. My parents would call, demanding explanations. David would probably hire a lawyer. The automotive industry press would have questions about the management change. But Emma would wake up knowing her mother had protected her. That was worth more than 43 dealerships, more than $2.3 billion in revenue, more than any amount of money could measure. I'd built an empire in silence, not for recognition but for security. For Emma's future. For the freedom to live life on my own terms without needing anyone's approval. David had spent years building an image of success on borrowed authority. I'd spent years building actual success while letting everyone underestimate me. In the end, only one of those strategies was sustainable. And only one of us got to go home to a daughter who knew without question that she deserved the world.